Good morning, everyone. And now I'm going to start talking about the wonderful, weird changes to the Final Fantasy VII Remake storyline. I have a few people confused. I know I was confused when I saw it on YouTube. All the weird clips of these ghostly figures swirling around characters and trying to change things. And it's a little stranger than you might think. Usually, when you have a remake, you have a game or a book or a retelling of the same story, minor changes here and there, maybe some fixes to the story. That's generally what you want. You want a more polished version, an updated version of what came before, graphics, gameplay, etc. for a video game. So that's great. It's when there's changes to the actual lore and story and plot that we begin to have problems. And in Final Fantasy VII Remake, that has manifested in the form of a Deus Ex Machina device, a literal device that has substance, that can be interacted with, that can turn into giant monsters that you have to fight, and it changes the entire ending of that part of the game. It also changes many other aspects of other games, for example, from Crisis Core and characters therein. So there's so many little changes that you think, oh, this is not a big deal. But when it starts interacting with the main plot and the main characters, then you begin to have problems. So we're not sure why Squaresoft has done this. Maybe they just wanted to make a new story with their beloved characters, with their beloved franchise that everyone likes, so that they at least get something new. Maybe, I don't know. But this definitely has a detrimental impact on the story as a whole and the fans as a whole, because they're saying, why is this changed? You didn't need to change anything. You had one through line of a story, and all you had to do was replicate it, and they didn't. So we're talking about the changes to the story in regard to these things called whispers. So the remake follows more of a reimagining of the original Final Fantasy VII, and although it's similar, it does not necessarily follow the exact story. So already you're like, oh, okay, that's going to be bad. It could be better. You don't know until you actually assess every plot point that has been changed. So there's these things called whisper specters, may change the course of a story. So there's these ghastly beings called whisper specters, and they are the Arbiters of Fate. This is what Red 13 says. So they allow people to die, they allow people to live, which originally we thought, okay, this is literally the creators or the writers saying, hey, you know what? In the previous game, it was like this, and these little whispers are going to keep things that way. But it turns out they do a lot more than that. So that's why people are speculating that Aerith may live, because they allow other people to live or other people to die. So it's this strange thing. For example, Biggs and Wedge. When Sector 7 comes down on the slums, Biggs and Wedge are still alive, even though they should be dead. So why did the Arbiters of Fate allow these two to live? Are they going to have a further role? Possibly. Why else would you do that? Why would Jesse not live, for example? So there are things that were done for dramatic reasons, like the death of Jesse, and things that were done for unknown reasons, like keeping these secondary characters alive, which is strange. So you see here, Biggs is resting up in his bed. I wouldn't be surprised if they keep Jesse alive, but there's a scene with her that's very touching where she literally collapses. So it's pretty much, I would say that's a good indicator of her death. There's other things. We skipped a few here. I think they missed a few. For example, Barret gets killed by Sephiroth. Sephiroth stabs Barret in the chest, and this whisper comes down and it has the magical ability to heal him, and he's alive. So, things like this. This is not a good aspect of the consistency of the physical world of the setting the story takes place in. You cannot have Deus Ex Machina devices running around fixing things willy-nilly. See, there's a very hard way to do Deus Ex Machina devices. And the easy or the best way is to have a world of gods that come in and solve problems, not capriciously, but here and there once in a while. These are literally a a swirling whirlwind of gods giving people life, keeping them dead, turning into boss monsters. This is not good. There has to be a lot of exposition of what the hell is going on. There was an actual scene of Sephiroth who, I guess he knows he's going to die or something, and he just takes his sword and he slices right through them all, and he keeps on walking on his journey. And then there's a very reminiscent scene of Cloud and everyone fighting Sephiroth, and then Cloud doing one-on-one against Sephiroth in some weird dreamlike world reminiscent of the Final Fantasy VII movie, I believe. So they're obviously taking inspiration from past events or past stories, like in Crisis Core. They show flashbacks of Zack. Is he alive? Is he dead? We're not exactly sure. It's supposed he's dead, because even Aerith thinks he's dead, or not around at least. So you don't just do this without a good reason. But it sounds as if it's another, maybe Spirits Within production. It has that sort of Spirits Within vibe. It's like they're just doing what they can with the money they're given and the time they're given, and they rushed it out. Well, they didn't rush it, but they pumped it out as fast as they could after I don't know how many years we've been waiting for this thing. So this is causing a lot of problems. From the story consistency, from things making sense, from, hey, Aerith won't die, or maybe we'll get a different reality, like a different timeline, a different dimension, where all the Final Fantasy VII events you thought were going to happen aren't, which is just going to piss a lot of people off. Unless these things are explained. You cannot have thousands of Deus Ex Machina devices running around changing things. You're going to piss people off. This is crazy. Imagine Greek mythology stories, or stories thousands of years ago. You're having an oral tradition story told about the gods, and all of a sudden Zeus starts killing people and then starts bringing them back to life. The value of lives, the value of life and death will have zero meaning as Cloud gets resurrected for the second time. Sephiroth gets resurrected for the third time after you thought you killed him. So that's the problem. Like, we have these final boss encounters where they just keep coming back and they become more powerful and bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, oh wow, how epic, how great. How ridiculous is it? Is now you have a Deus Ex walking around bringing people back from the dead, like it's the will of the planet, which is another problem with the story, because we already have creatures from the planet called weapons that defend the planet. There's a whole series of plot points, whole series of optional mini bosses that you can just fight for the fun of it. So now the planet has these physical, real, giant Godzilla-like monsters, and it has these ghost-like characters who can, or whatever you want to call these ghosts, who can control life and death. Which all that does is dilute the consistency and believability of the world. And it's just a sad, bad thing in general. So this is the near the end of the remake. Sephiroth pops out of nowhere. This guy you're hunting down, he's like, hey, how's it going? And you have to fight him. Aerith is sort of alluding to a few things. She has the ability to walk through fate. She's changing her fate. This sort of implication that she's going to be changing her death if it ever does come to that point. It's just mini bosses that occur as a result of this. Possibility that Zack might survive with all those weird flashbacks that were a little different from Crisis Core. Not too different, I don't think. Again, another weird vision as Cloud and Aerith walk past this depiction of Zack. I'm not sure about this. Yeah, that they're fighting this weird void. I don't know what that... Like, anytime you have a dreamscape, which is real or not real, you're really messing with your audience. You're like, what are you doing? Why are we doing this? Is it a cutscene? Is it a flashback? Is it a dreamscape? Is he hallucinating? Is some alien throwing divine knowledge into Cloud's brain? Well, essentially, that happens every time he encounters Sephiroth. Cloud has a panic attack and falls down and can't think straight. Is that a manifestation of that? All these questions start popping up. Like, what the hell is going on? Why is your narrative becoming a piece of Swiss cheese? Stop doing that, game. There's cryptic messages from Sephiroth. That's nothing new. They're just different ones now. Yep, the story is pretty much different now. So these are all bad things. And the only way they're going to make this work is if they lock down or eliminate this factor or variable as a force that has a specific goal. Because it's clearly not consistency with the first story, as some has led to believe. Or else Biggs and Wedge would have died. So you're really messing with characters in the narrative for no reason, aside from, I don't know why. It looks cool. It's a new element. It's a new defense mechanism of the planet, whatever that means. The idea of the planet having a will of its own is kind of an ongoing belief. The life stream doing its own thing. The whole inclusion of Aerith and her white materia. That's already there in the story. So I guess this could be expansions of that. It's just confusing things and it's destroying lore. So I would say that is probably one of the worst things you can do in a story, whether it's a Mary Sue or a Deus Ex Machina or a series of MacGuffins. All of these plot devices that are just magically stopping things and causing things to begin again. It's not what you want. It's not what fans want. It's not what writers should be using. They should be far, far away from Deus Ex Machina devices, even if we're talking about a character like Sephiroth who can fly and be resurrected. And there's multiple versions of Sephiroth, and there's multiple endings of his final form of Sephiroth. So, yeah, I get it. These fantasy elements are almost already present, but now you have the story telling us, oh, this is how it didn't happen this way. Oh, Barret didn't really die. Oh, Jesse might not have died. These sorts of things are just bad ideas. Story should be consistent, make sense, and be clear, not have broken elements that confuse your audience and effectively piss off your fan base, especially when you're buying a remake or playing a remake. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Hope you're having a great day.